Querida gente de Mundo Whisky, acabamos de llegar a Tobermory, luego de un largo viaje, durmiendo 2 horas nada más, porque dejamos a mi querido amigo Jim McEwan, y de ahí lo despedí, me fui a dormir a las 2 de la mañana, a las 4 salimos con el ferry hacia aquí, son las 11 de la mañana y vamos a visitar esta prestigiosa destilería, que es una hermosura realmente y que tiene unos productos únicos. También vamos a estar con mi amigo Nico Vilamoret y con Alan, que nos recibe todos los años. Así que espero que disfruten este gran programa.
So welcome to Tobermory Distillery. We've been here now since 1798, so one of the oldest operating distilleries in Scotland. Now we're at the very start of the process here, so by law we are only allowed to use 3 raw materials. Okay, so first one is water, of which you can see we have lots here. We're never short of water in Scotland. The second one is malted barley. Okay, so we will use 2 types of malted barley at Tobermory. So we will use peated malted barley for our peated whiskies, our peated expressions, and we will use unpeated barley for our unpeated whiskies. So the unpeated barley we will bring from the mainland, and we will reverse the lorry up to the archway just down here, and we will tip the lorry up and bring the malt into the distillery. Now that will come from the mainland. Our peated malt will come from just south of here in the Isle of Islay. So, and that is what we use to make our Leitchick whisky. Leitchick whisky I always describe as a bit of Islay, but not from Islay. So the first stage of the process, we need to take the malted barley and we need to mill it, and we use our Porteous mill. So the malt will come in, and the Porteous mill has 2 sets of rotating cylinders running into one another. So the first set of cylinders will grind the malt down and separate the husk from the inside of the barley corn, and then it will fall through into separators. So we have to grind into 3 very, very distinct fractions. The first fraction separates out in the first separator, and that's flour. The coarser material will then go through to a second separator, and it will sort out the husk, so it will then join the flour, and then we have the middle section. So the middles are where we grind it finer but not too fine. So we just grind the starch down just fine enough to be able to use it, but not so fine as it gives us problems during mashing. So we have these 3 very distinct fractions, and we use them all through the process. So flour in the middles will give us our extraction, and the husk we will use at the next stage of the process during mashing. So very, very simple, very straightforward. All these mills always tend to be quite old. They're very simple in design and they last for many, many years. So this one we have in here is almost 50 years old now. So the next stage in the process will be the mashing. So we'll move to the mash house now. So if you follow me. Once we've ground our malted barley down, we have a product called grist. And the grist we will mix with hot water inside the mashing machine here, and it will run into the mash tun. So we'll use a ratio of 4 to 1. So we will have 4 litres of water for every 1 kilo of grist. And so with each mash being 5 tonnes, we will add the mix 5 tonnes of grist with 20 tonnes of water. So what's very important to remember at this stage is this water will be at a very, very specific temperature. So it will be at about 65 degrees. And what allows this to happen here is that the enzymes that are resident in the malted barley will start to convert starch to sugar. So we're starting to break starch resident in that barley down into sugar, and it's the sugar we need to ferment. So once we add that water and the grist, we will then start to run this off. So the bottom of the mash tun has a perforated floor, and the husk that we generated during the milling process will allow that liquid to filter, and we'll end up with a very, very clear liquid called wort. Okay, so we start to run that off, and once it's run off, we use a small underback here, and it will go to the fermenter. Okay. But that's only the first water. We then add a second water, and that second water is added at a ratio of 2 to 1. So we add 2 litres of water for every kilo of grist. And that water is much hotter. So we'll go from 65 degrees centigrade up to about 75 degrees centigrade. And what we'll want to do there is start to remove and extract as much sugar as we possibly can. So a very simple analogy to use is it's much easier to dissolve sugar in hot tea or coffee than it is cold water. So we increase that temperature to extract as much of that sugar as we possibly can. Once the second water has come through, the fermenter next door is now full. But we're not finished there. We then add a third water, and that third water is hotter again. So it's about 85 degrees. And what we want to do there is extract and recover as much yield as we can. So in here is still about 1% sugar. So it's important we remove that. And we use the third water to do that. And that takes the third water and it takes us to the tanks above us. And we will use that as the first water for the next batch. So we're always recycling and recovering that yield. Okay, very, very straightforward, very simple piece of equipment is the mash tun. So from the mash tun, we will take the liquid through to the fermenter and we will start to ferment. Okay, so we'll go and look at the fermentation vessel. We add the yeast early. We use a pressed yeast in Tobermory, so it's quite almost like clay in appearance, and it's about 25% dry matter. And we will add 3 bags by hand into the wash bag. And at first the yeast doesn't do much. Okay, it needs to get used to its environment and its surroundings. It's quite warm in here, so the wash bag is typically about 20 degrees Celsius at the start of fermentation. And for the first 2 or 3 hours, the yeast doesn't do much at all, so it's just really getting used to the environment it finds itself in. Then it will start to ferment. So in a strong sugary solution, yeast will preferentially ferment, so it will produce alcohol. Now that all happens about 50 to 60 hours in the wash bag, but we can ferment at Tobermory up to 110, 120 hours. So it would beg a question, which is, well, if you make all your alcohol really early, then why would you bother fermenting for so long? And we start to build character here. So we start to develop the whiskey, the character of the whiskey itself. So if we decided to take it to the stills very, very early, it would give us new make spirit that would be quite nutty, quite cereally, quite malty. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the character we're after here. So we let it ferment on, and then all of a sudden the wild yeasts and bacteria around about us will start to play a part, and they will start to sweeten the liquid in here. So you will move, the longer you leave it, it will go from nutty, spicy, malty, new make spirit. It will take on, the longer we leave it, more like a kind of fresh cut hay. Fresh cut hay will then develop into sweet cut grass. Sweet cut grass will then become quite fruity. So we want to leave this till we've got quite a fruity wash. So again, 110 to 120 hours will give us what we're after. And at that point, we will take it to the stills for distillation. So what we have after that is a wash round about 8% alcohol. So like a very, very, very strong beer. Welcome to the still house. This is a very, very traditional still house. This is one of the few still houses you will actually see that are still coloured, pipework coloured in the traditional way. So back in the day, if a customs official, so if a government official came to site, he would expect to identify pipework by its colour. So anything associated with a wash still would be coloured red. Anything associated with a spirit still would be coloured blue. Pipework containing water would be green, and any pipework containing finished spirit would be black. And we've maintained that tradition in this still house to this day, which is very unusual to see. You don't often see it. So when a fermented wash comes through from the tun room, it comes through to this vessel here, the wash charger, the vessel coloured in red. And you can see the corresponding still also has flanges and valves coloured in red again, so it's very easy to associate. We will charge the still, fill it up, and then the stillman will switch the still on and we'll bring it to the boil. Now, wash is still quite lively. You saw how many bubbles there were in the fermenter next door. So he needs to keep an eye on how much steam he applies, or it will rise right up and it will go over the lye pipe. So he has a window in the wash still. Very, very easy to spot wash stills. They'll always have a window in them. And if the bubbles become too high, you can cut back the steam and the liquid level will follow. So as the vapours rise, the cooler the copper gets, they will condense to liquid, they will roll back, and they will reboil, and this will give us a very nice, light, refined spirit. So if we charge 15,000 litres to here, we will reduce the volume by 2/3. So we will boil off 5,000 litres. The strength will go from 8% to approximately 24% and give us a product we call low wines, but again, not strong enough to be called whisky. So we need to distill it again. So that then comes our second distillation. The other characteristic we can see are the unusual lye pipes, the pipe that joins the head of the still to the condenser. So normally in most distilleries you will see a long straight piece of copper or a short piece of copper, but it'll typically be straight. It might be inclined, it might run down. You know, if you've looked at Macallan, very, very steep. That gives quite a heavy spirit. Because this is a very small still house, then they've had to put this long straight piece, they've had to put a bend in it. Now this bend will give us lots of reflux again. As the vapour is trying to work uphill, it will cool, it will condense, it will run back. And this gives us quite a nice citrusy, oily note to the new make spirit, and it's absolutely a characteristic defined by these lovely lye pipes, so we would never change it. Now, the whole distillation process is managed by the stillman from here, so we have steam control valves, so this will allow him to control the heat input going into each individual still. We give him a very comfortable seat to sit on for the duration of the still, so the still runs can be quite long. So the wash still runs in here are 10 hours. Now that's double what you would expect to see in most distilleries, but again gives us that lovely, nice, light spirit. So typically from every 5-ton mash here we will capture about 2,000 litres of new make spirit. Again, a lovely, nice, light, fruity notes, lovely citrus notes coming from these beautiful lye pipes, and that is our new make spirit complete. We are now into producing gin, so this particular still has only made 3 batches so far, and we have a 4th batch charged, and we will distill this today. So the still itself comes from a parent company in South Africa, but dates back to the 1960s. It was made in England, made lots of gin in South Africa before we brought it back. We have added a number of modifications to it, so we use 14 botanicals. We try to source as many of these botanicals locally as we possibly can. You will see it has a longer neck than a giraffe, so it's a huge long neck. We have water jackets on the neck, so again, the process of reflux, if you want a nice light refined spirit, you want to try and have as much reflux as you possibly can. So we have water jackets we can fill on the neck of the still, cool the neck right down, and then force lots and lots of that vapour back into the still to be reboiled. Roughly, we will take about somewhere around the region of 1,200 bottles per distillation. So again, we try to keep everything as traditional and craft as we can. So we bag all the botanicals on site. We will infuse them, steep them in the still on site. The alcoholic strength in here for steeping is about 65% ABV, and that helps us to efficiently remove all those lovely oils and flavours from the botanical before we boil it up. And it gives us the new make spirit we have here is heavily influenced, needs to be juniper for a start. The major botanical has to be juniper, but then we have a lot of coriander and a lot of citrus, so an awful lot of orange and lemon peel. and that citrus note balances the real spicy note of the coriander beautifully, so it gives us a lovely balanced spirit. We also add, unusually, a small splash, 4% of our whisky new make spirit. Yep, so not too many distillers do that, and it gives us a lovely malty, creamy mouthfeel as well. It is a beautiful gin. So beautiful, in fact, I don't think we have any to try. We sell it as soon as we make it, so it's very rare at the minute, so that's why we're having to make more. So.
So the order is from right to left. Yeah. So we have, you know about our whiskey, we have the two kinds, Tobermory and Lechic. Tobermory unpeated, Lechic peated. So the four whiskies that we have here are the two examples that we currently have of Tobermory. Tobermory 12-year-old, which is our core expression of our unpeated whiskey. It's bottled at 46.3 ABV. It's a light spirit. It has a salty finish, a little tang of the sea. It has a lovely vanilla creamy quality, little bits of honey going on, floral notes in there as well. Next to that, with the grey top, we have the Tobermory 11. So generally we cask at 63.5 ABV, and the evaporation and the dilution takes care of all the rest. But the next one along here, Tobermory 11-year-old, is a special limited edition, and it was cast at a very high alcohol rate, right, must have been about 70, and it is 11 years old, 9 years in bourbon casks, ex-bourbon casks, and 2 years in a sherry butt. Those 2 years and the 9 before have reduced the alcohol level to a mere 62.4%. So that's strong. Approach with caution. Okay, so we're moving away from unpeated into the world of peat. So Lechic, we've given you two of the new ones here. Our Lechic whiskies are what they call heavily peated, but because of the lightness of our spirit, they don't come across as heavy. They've got a strong smokiness, but a lightness on the palate. What we've given you through here to try are our two newest limited editions. We have a 13-year-old and a 21-year-old. The 13-year-old has spent its entire life in port pipe. Okay, all port pipes. So port pipe is a cask, it's a large cask, 550, 600 litre cask, which has formerly had porto. So very nice. It's a meaty whiskey, this. Just in last week, and long anticipated, this is a 21-year-old Lechic with a manzanilla finish. So manzanilla, being a very dry Fino sherry, gives a very smooth finish to this smoky, peaty whiskey. It's perfectly balanced. You get a little bit of sweetness, but not too much, and a lovely kind of smoky, full-bodied flavour.
to your friends or if you keep to yourself. And for your knowledge. Please. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Wonderful. It's been very exciting to have you here. And thank you for coming to Buenos.
Querida gente de Mundo Whisky, espero que les haya gustado el recorrido en esta destilería que hemos finalizado recién. Nos llevamos para el Museo Nacional del Whisky, ese single malt de 21 años de Tobermory que es exclusivísimo. Y bueno, le quiero agradecer mucho a Nico Vilamoret y también a mi amigo Alan de aquí de la destilería Tobermory.